So, Ayse, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank
It-
you. Thank you for having me.
yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you because I strongly believe in what we discussed before, in let's say that academics and practitioners can benefit a lot from each other's knowledge and insights. And in that sense, I'm very glad to do this interview about the article that you co-author together with Dana Born and Horace Ling about what makes leadership development programs succeed. So thank you so much for this interview. My first question is that the article states that the size of the leadership development industry is massive, a whopping 60 billion.
Mhm.
But it also cites data that only 10% of these investments delivers concrete results. What do you think the reasons are that most investment in leadership development programs do not deliver concrete results?
Mhm. Yes. Thank you for having me again, Dirk. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to start off by reminding that these numbers that we cite in our article are just estimates, right? Even the fact that, only a small portion of leadership development programs succeed, that is based on anecdotal evidence. And we cite it because we want to make a point to suggest that, okay, most likely the programs are failing, but the reality is most programs aren't evaluated. We aren't measuring the impacts of our programs, and that's a huge problem. So I want to make sure that we know this, and we want to work with that more deliberately, like to measurement and what difference are we making. These kind of questions are really important. And besides that, there's still a high chance that programs aren't delivering the intended results. And that's in part because leadership development is relatively a new practice, and there's a lot of enthusiasm about it, a lot of money and time being spent on it. But we don't know exactly how to do it right? So that's my interpretation of we are learning, and we're learning day by day, as like you said, collaborate. There are more collaborations between researchers and practitioners, and I think the more we discover, the better we're going to do our job in terms of delivering effective leadership development programs.
Okay, now we'll get back to the measurement part later because that's a topic that I find really fascinating. But my second question is, what would your recommendations be around the format of leadership development programs? For instance, should they be delivered online or in a classroom? Um, should they be short or intensive, or be more spread over time? Should personality assessments be included?
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. And specifically, we did some research on this. So I'd like to talk about some of our findings from our own
Great.
research, again, with Dana Bourne, Horace Ling from Harvard Kennedy School, and also Diego Arias from University of Detroit Mercy. We've been working on this question for a while of what difference leadership development programs are making. And so there's a short answer and a long answer to this question. And the short answer is we find that short, intensive online programs can be at least as effective as longer programs. But there are kind of caveats in the sense that these programs need to be designed for online formatting. They can't be just an in-person program haphazardly and quickly turned into an online program. That's one. And the other is if the program is longer, and in our research, we see it's about like 4 weeks or so, we start to see diminishing benefits in the sense that online programs tend to deliver less benefits if they are longer in time. And part of the reason is what we discovered in our research is people begin to struggle to compartmentalize the program, what they're doing online, and the other things in their life, like their family, their work demands. And then this creates a bit more stress in their life. That's kind of one of the reasons why we discover that longer online programs can be can be less beneficial. So that's
Mhm.
kind of a little bit the short answer.
Okay.
Mhm.
My other question is, do you have any recommendations regarding the content that should be covered in leadership development programs?
Yeah, this is a very important question, and I think it's a question we aren't thinking as much as we should when designing programs, evaluating programs. So we should, like, all program designers need to ask this to themselves, like, what is it? What kind of content is relevant here? And importantly, what is it that I'm trying to address here? What problem am I trying to solve, right? And so if there's a more technical issue, that a specific technical skill that a manager needs to learn, then like short trainings that are focused on those skills can be helpful. But I think leadership development is way bigger than that. Leadership development is more about the person. It's about the identity of the person. The whole person approach becomes really important. Addressing people as who they are at work and outside of work, developing them holistically. And so I think leadership development content of those programs should cater to this whole person approach. And that's what we find to be effective in our research as well. And what this means is that the programs need to be focusing more on generalized behavioral skills like resilience, empathy, self-awareness, as opposed to more like specific, context-specific skills. And once we kind of target these more generalized behavioral outcomes, once we also provide opportunities for people to integrate their learnings into who they are and what they're trying to achieve in life broadly, then this will give people a chance to develop more holistically, and they will kind of learn skills, develop in ways that will shape their behavior across time and context. That would be my recommendation based on our research of what leadership development programs should focus on.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. The whole person approach. I really liked it, and I think for too long we have basically tried to compartmentalize people at work and in their private setting, and but people are people, and they bring their personality with them, whatever their environment is. So
Yes, and it makes a huge difference when you approach people as human beings and not just professionals in a professional development setting. It really addresses their dignity, and they remember who they are before they put on this, coat of working, the armor of working over many, many years. This is especially important for people who have been in jobs for a very long time, like late career, senior leaders, for example, because they kind of remember, they keep in touch, they get in touch with an aspect of who they are that was very important for them. And it provides intrinsic motivation for their leadership. They remember why they are leading, why it is important for them as a whole. And when the why is there, the general sayings like the how is kind of easier when they have a strong why. So when we address, there's a lot of benefit of addressing professionals holistically as whole person in leadership development programs.
yeah,
There's this saying I love a lot. I use it a lot in my presentations too, that the process of becoming a great leader is the same process as becoming an integrated human being. And I strongly believe in that we don't need to treat people differently. It's like everything that we need to become a whole integrated human being, understanding our motivations, strengths, growing in life, developing character, all sorts of things, developing resilience, ability to bounce back, ability to understand other people. These are generally really important things to learn in life, and they become particularly important when we are leading others, when we have responsibility of other people's work and life. It becomes important that we are that kind of well-integrated person.
right now there are a number of topics that leaders need to know about, and you can think about big data, artificial intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
knowing more about the strategy of the business. Also, if you're working in roles that are, much further removed from the strategy making process. Do you also think that those topics have deserve a time and place in leadership development programs?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I wouldn't want to downplay the importance of understanding the important topics of our context. Like there's a zeitgeist, and the leaders need to know that what matters to people, what are the levers that drive businesses, gives them competitive advantage. So these things are really important for when we are managing businesses, organizations. Generally, leadership classes that I have been teaching, and it's about leading people. And it is true that people are embedded in a certain context, and AI technology can make a difference, and leaders need to know about that. But I think in the end, a leader, because fundamentally it's a job about relationships and other people, they need to know what it means to be a human being. Even if we are learning AI, for example, and the technology, the leadership aspect of it is like, okay, what is left for leaders to understand, to maybe work with in terms of the human relationships in the space of AI, right? So that's kind of really important. But that's not to undermine I don't want to underestimate in any way the importance of technical skills, but I think fundamentally leadership is a people problem. And one of the things we do in our classes at Fordham, when teaching management to more sophomore students, younger kids, but also in our advanced management classes for more senior leaders, is that we kind of try to give them we have a framework of knowing, doing, and being. And the knowledge bit, like what they need to conceptually understand and figure out, we kind of give them as information, before class, as reading materials, some video materials. But once we are in the classroom and engaging with, teachers and with peers, we kind of focus on the doing and being dimensions of leadership, in the sense that we give them opportunities to exercise skills, to reflect on who they are, what this conceptual knowledge mean to them, to other people that they're leading. So that part, the doing being part, is also really important. And ideally, we want to kind of create a learning environment that blends all of these. But where do we blend it? We blend all of these in the identity of the person, in how they understand who they are and how they relate to others, right? That's the kind of vessel, like the identity, the person is the vessel that holds all the knowledge and also skills and ways of being.
Well, one of the criticisms that leadership development programs often get is that it's seen as a one-off motivational boost for the individual. So you pump people with ideas, with motivation, with enthusiasm, with energy, but that the effects tend to wear off, and sometimes pretty quickly. Did you do any research, or do you have any opinions about it?
Yes, this is something that we have seen in our own data as well. And we have been collecting data on this for many years, repeatedly. And we've been assessing leaders before the leadership development programs, 2 weeks after, and then 6 weeks after the programs. And we did use control groups in our analysis always. So we kind of are comparing people who are going through the program to those who aren't going through the program, like similar leaders. And there also, the control group is also assessed using surveys before, after, and 6 months after the program. So short-term impact, long-term impact of the programs we are kind of uncovering in our research. And what we see is that indeed, like at the 6 months follow-up, like most of the effects disappear. Most of the effects that we observe in the personal level changes. There is a little bit of leftovers, like a sense of growth stays a little bit, but not really to a meaningful magnitude. And so we think a lot about this. And I personally don't think of this as a failure of leadership development programs. It is because, like, for example, in well-being research, there's this idea of hedonic treadmill. When you, like, any changes in life events, any boosts or also a decline in well-being, after a while, it reverts back to more or less the baseline levels. So we know that to be the way that personal change works. And if that is the case, I don't necessarily think of this as a failure, it's just like how it happens. And the other thing is, of course, it tells us as program developers and organizations who invest billions into these trainings, is like, okay, how can we capitalize on this boost to create long-lasting habits in people, right? So we should think very deliberately about, like, establishing habits when the boost is happening, and also continuously engaging people in the program through follow-ups, creating a community who is more likely to kind of keep in touch with each other and make the program content alive in each other's lives. That can play a role as well. These are some of the important ways that we can capitalize on the boost. But the other thing that I'm thinking is, if this is, it's what, how we are assessing changes through questions. It's a cognitive assessment. It's like, how do you feel right now? And compared to before, how do you change? So maybe change, what we can expect from it is just like a little bit marginal at each time, but over time it accumulates, right? Like
It compounds over time.
exactly. It
Yeah.
compounds over time. So it's maybe unrealistic to expect a complete overhaul of a person by just participating in one program. But at each program, we're changing in a direction and a meaningful way, but maybe not statistically significant that we can observe it in the behaviors. But over time, it may compound, like you say.
The point that you raised earlier in this conversation, which is one that is now a very, very big theme in the leadership development community, is measurement. How can I measure the impact that that programs had? And it goes back to the first point we discussed around, the investments, justifying the investments. What does the research suggest in this area? What would be, let's say, good measurement instruments, good methodologies, best practices in the area of impact measurement? Is there anything you can share around it?
Yes, of course, happy to share. And I want to mention first the gold standard. The gold standard is like the best kind of evaluation that an organization can do to make sure that they can claim this is the impact that our program is making. So in the gold standard, there needs to be a control group. There needs to be counterfactual to what the program participants are going through. So ideally, a control group that's similar to the ones that are participating, but who aren't taking the program. And there are different ways of doing this. It could be maybe people who signed up for a future program, but they aren't really taking up the program yet. It could be, and this is the way we did it, we asked people to nominate people who are similar to them in their leadership. So we kind of send out surveys to them. But we need a kind of control group. And there's the waitlist control as well, like when the program has the capacity for attendance, if there are people on the waitlist, those can be used as a control group as well. And then, of course, we need like pre-post assessments, ideally also shortly after the program, but also a bit long-term after the program, some months after the program. And quantitative assessments using validated scales. If our aim is, let's say, to increase empathy, we need to use validated scales from psychological sciences or maybe leadership scholarship that assess empathy. And that requires, like, this design is a design that requires collaborations between scientists and practitioners. Like, it's there are people who are trained in creating these assessments. And now I want to acknowledge that this is effortful for an organization. And I'm not saying that an organization needs to repeat this at each time that they're rolling out a program. But I think this could be a proof of concept for if there is a program that's happening, like a core program. And for once, an organization should spend the time and money to validate and to assess what difference this program is making as a proof of concept. And once that is done, then the program can be extended, amended a little bit depending on the needs of the context, needs of the specific sample. But it is important to do this for once so that the organization has a good idea of like, what is this program actually achieving? So that's kind of my recommendation. And it's really, like we discussed, it's important to include Leadership 360 assessment and to see what difference the program is making on the people that leaders are interacting with in the workplace after the program or in their home as well. Like just to get this perspective and also to see some of the more objective, measurable business outcomes, like if they exist, right? Like to measure performance in an objective way. These would be my recommendation. And the qualitative questions so mixed method is also still important. Quantitative scales are fine, but asking really brilliant, like well thought out, open-ended questions can also unpack a lot, like of what's happening in the program. So these are also, those qualitative open-ended questions can also be meaningful to include.
Yeah, I think so. But would you also recommend people, for instance, to maintain a kind of, to start or maintain a journal during their development journey and afterwards? Is that also a practice that you could recommend?
That is definitely, that's something we are thinking about it for them with our students as well, like that it could be really nice to, what I did this semester is I made them write a letter to their future self of some of the things that they learned. And these were a bit like younger kids. They're like 19 years old, and they write a future letter to, when they become a manager, like in the workplace, what they should remember about leading others. And it was extremely beautiful, like the things that they wrote, like it kind of summed up everything that they learned about what leadership means to them, what they recommend their future self to focus on. Sometimes there's this idea that advice giving benefits the person giving the advice a lot. So it's almost like they're giving advice to their future self. And in that action, they're kind of learning themselves. So it's I think that final class, that final meeting, whatever it is, where people reflect on what has happened is a hugely important part of the program.
We touched on a number of aspects of leadership development during this interview. Are there any final thoughts in this area that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yes, there's definitely. I think I would want us to be very, very deliberate about what we mean by leadership and what kind of leaders the world needs right now. Because we have been really focused so much on efficiency in organizations, and the leader's role is almost seen from this lens of like someone who enables efficiency and effectiveness in organizations. And what this does is that it brings the view of for the leader that people are kind of instrumental to the goals of the organization, to the purpose.
They're a resource.
They are resources, exactly. They
Yeah,
are the human resources. And I think it is really paramount right now that we shift this perspective and we make leaders think more recognizing the inherent dignity of the workers that they are leading, and the kind of potential good that the organization, and also the harm, like being mindful of the harm that business activities can have, the impact that it can have on the societies, on the communities. And when we think of the role of the leader from this lens, like not only just enabling efficiency in an organization, but also generating humanistically oriented outcomes for employees, for the world. And that's the kind of huge shift in what kind of leaders we want to train, because giving these technical skills that bring more efficiency can sometimes leave us with leaders who are ethically doesn't have the grounding to tackle the challenges that are being experienced right now in our world, right? And then we have all these ethics scandals, and then we cannot really handle or cooperate and coordinate tackling these huge societal issues or business issues as well. So it's really important to shift our perspective, all in all, to cut it short, and to think also about the humanistic side of leadership and how can we develop humanistic leaders who are not only capable of leading effectively, but also towards well-being and flourishing for all.
Well, thank you
Yes.
so much, Ayse, for this interview. I learned a lot from you, and I'm sure that our listeners and viewers will as well. And I would love to have you on a different topic in the show at another moment in time, if that would be okay with you, because
Of course.
I think it's just fascinating seeing and learning from your research.
Of course, it is my pleasure, and I would love to join you again and be your guest. Thank you for all these thought-provoking questions, Dirk. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you very, very much, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Bye
See you.
bye.
Bye-bye.